Hey, everybody, what's going on? Keith Niebuhr of Gators Online, joined by Corey Bender, also of Gators Online. This is a special edition of the Gators Online recruiting show. Obviously, Blake Alderman of Gators Online, and I did one that ran earlier this week. So in that one, we previewed the entire official visit weekend in Gainesville. There's going to be 17, 18 guys. It kind of goes up, it goes down as you get closer to the weekend. And now, today, for this show, Corey and I are going to talk about 5 recruits from this giant group that we think are the 5 most likely official visitors this weekend to end up at Florida. So from the 18, 17, 18, 19, could be more, could be less, from that group, these are the guys that Corey thinks, and we're putting all the pressure on you, big man, these are the guys that Corey thinks are the most likely to end up in the class. And by the way, Corey and I were talking off air before we got going, and Corey, I'll ask you, you said, hey, man, these are just the 5 most likely. This could end up being a pretty bountiful weekend for the Florida Gators, if not, right during this weekend, but, laying the groundwork for future commitments. What do you think?
Yeah, I think when you look at this list, Keith, it's probably all, as far as from top to bottom, probably the most likely candidates as far as how many. You could pick between 8 to 10 guys who have a really good chance of staying in this class. It's just, you look at overall, offensive line, DBs. That's why when you brought up this topic to me, it took some thinking because I went back and forth and inserted a few guys, took them out, put some other ones in there. There's a lot of guys in this group that I could see ending up in Florida's class. So it was a good topic to actually kind of discuss. And I brought it down to see who's the most likely. I'm not saying these other guys won't end up in Florida's class, but I think the 5 that we're going to talk about are probably the most likely right now.
Okay, let's get me back on screen here. I know nobody wants to see me. Corey, all they've been doing lately is making fun of my hair. They're haters, just jealousy.
Well, at least you have hair. I don't even have hair. So
it ain't great, but I got it, I guess. So these are the 5 guys, and I'll go through all 5 of them, and then we will jump back toward them. 4-star cornerback CJ Bronoff of Windermere High School, just west of Orlando. He's a Nebraska commit. And 4-star cornerback CJ Bronoff. 4-star offensive tackle Javon Cooper, a Syracuse commit from Melbourne Central Catholic. 4-star cornerback CJ Hester from Cocoa, Florida. 3-star offensive lineman Javari Lucas from Glade Central, down in the muck, Glade Central. And the 5th guy on our list tonight of the guys that we think are the 5 most likely, again, Corey, the 5 most likely from this big official visitor weekend to end up at Florida in the, at the end of the day, is 3-star interior offensive lineman. You and I both think he's a 4-star. We'll get into that later. But that's Jari Carr, an Ocala native who plays at Bradenton, Florida's IMG Academy. Corey, let's start with Jari Carr here. Again, 3-star guy, but Blake and I talked about this the other day. 4-star frame, 5-star young man. We say that you don't really get to know all these kids, but he's a guy we've sort of gotten to know pretty well, and I feel comfortable saying that. Quality individual, good dude. Corey, there are some crystal ball picks out there, at least one that I know of, I think, for Tennessee. But this is a guy that you, me, Blake have always thought. He's from Ocala. Yeah, he's down at IMG Academy where Florida's been hit or miss in recruiting. His mom grew up north of Ocala, like almost halfway to Gainesville. She's got the Gator blood. He's got the Gator blood. Corey, is Florida going to get Jari Carr? What can you tell us about this young guy?
Yeah, no, I think right now, Keith, I think Florida and Tennessee are the 2 schools that really monitor the most. Obviously, I think right now he's picked between 4 to 5 schools, but a lot of the buzz are on those 2 SEC schools. And like you said, Keith, his mom is a huge Florida supporter. And Carr actually told us when we went down to IMG this spring, he said his mom prefers him staying closer to home. She kind of jokingly kind of jabs at him about Florida, kind of in his ear, kind of wanting him to stay home. But he was adamant, like, hey, it's going to be my decision. Tennessee does get the last OV right before he makes his decision, so that's something to keep in mind. But I know from speaking to sources in Gainesville, I know optimism is very high. And I had one person tell me saying, they'd be surprised if he didn't end up in Gainesville, that, Florida almost would have to not tank the season, but have a pretty poor fall for him not to end up there. And I know when we spoke with Carr, he said it's like a home-like feeling, Gainesville, something he doesn't get on other campuses. He's visited Florida more than any other school. And like you said, Keith, an Ocala native, a guy that kind of grew up around the program, knows the tradition. So I think it is very close. Tennessee's only received 1 visit to our knowledge, and they knocked out of the park. And I think obviously that last OV is going to be key. But I think right now I'm sticking with Florida, giving them the slight edge over the Volunteers.
Okay. Let's see if I can get this one off the screen. All right. Corey, inquiring minds want to know, are your sources in Gainesville, like the waiter at Leonardo's Pizza? I don't even know if that's still open, or are they legitimate sources? I mean, people always want to know, and I'm kidding, obviously, but when you say sources, let's get into the nitty gritty of what we do.
Yeah.
And obviously there's different people connected to young men. There's people inside programs. There's people connected to programs. There's you've got high school coaches. You've got all kinds of people there. And just so people know, you're not just getting this information from just random guy asking you for change at a stoplight in Gainesville. But all right, Corey, I did all the talk. I asked you a question. I did all the talk.
No, I would just say real quick to close on. Yeah, someone with real close knowledge of his recruitment that's tied into it pretty well. And they believe too, from talking to people on the Florida side, that Tennessee is a real threat, but some people have kind of mentioned the two words visit high. Obviously they made a good impression, but those tied into Carr's recruitment, those close, to the situation, they think Florida would almost have to have a pretty poor season for him not to end up in the class come December.
Whenever there's complaints, when you and I do a show, it's never about you. Everybody loves Corey. Everybody hates me. I talk too much. So Corey, forgive me if I talk over you. I don't mean
to. You're good, man. You're good.
I hate talking about this stuff. All right, before we get going, I got to put up one thing here real quick. Be sure to like and subscribe down below. If you like what we're doing, hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe. Tell your friends. We're trying to build this thing. The more subscribers we get, the more ads we can get, advertisers, and the more shows we can do. And we want to do a lot more live shows. We want to do shows on location. So anyway, let me get back to this one right here. All right, Corey. And then next young man. Let's go to this is a really intriguing one because I would say like 5-6 months ago, I didn't really know much about this guy at all. And it's 4-star cornerback CJ Bronoff. He's from Winter Garden, but he attends school in Windermere, which just west of Orlando. I lived there as a kid. And really good player. He's committed to Nebraska. Corey, this guy runs like the wind. A lot of people don't think he's going to stick with Nebraska. What can you tell us about CJ Bronoff, Florida's chances?
Yeah, so Florida just offered early this spring, but since then, I mean, they've had probably the most momentum. And I know when I spoke with CJ himself, he said of all the schools that had the best chance of flipping him, it'd be the in-state schools. So I know there is a big appeal of him staying closer to home. And secondary coach Javon Wilson, he actually offered him when he was at Arkansas. So when he offered him at Florida, there was some familiarity already in place. And I know from one thing that the Bronoff family definitely respects about Javon Wilson is it wasn't just all football, for the in-home visit and just, hey, you're going to come in and start this and that. They really kind of put football to the side and just wanted to get to know each other just as people. And I know that's something that, Bronoff's parents really respected about him. And, obviously the appeal of staying close to home, the culture around the program, that's another thing he really likes a lot. And then obviously the whole SEC appeal. So I think right now, I mean, there's a lot of confidence in Gainesville. Florida, there's no doubt they've been buzzing the most probably since around March time. But I have told people, on our message board too, with Matt Rule's staff, they do a good job of offering kids early. And that's the one thing with them. They got in on his recruitment way before a lot of these other schools did. I mean, early this year, you had the Oregons of the world, LSU. All these schools kind of came for CJ just this past spring, while Nebraska got in the mix not way before then and got his commitment. So there is a little bit of loyalty there, and it's not going to be easy flipping him. But right now, Florida, in my opinion, from talking to people and just the buzz in his recruitment, Florida has the edge over, Penn State and Florida State as far as the schools with the best shot at flipping him. And I think this weekend could really go a long way in that.
Okay. And I want to point this out. FSU's, like you said, is one of the schools heavily involved here. A lot of Gator fans are laughing at FSU now because they were so god-awful last season. But it wasn't that long ago that Florida was god-awful and FSU was seemingly riding high. So for Florida, this is the kind of guy you got to get him. You can't let him go to FSU because these things can turn quickly. I mean, these things can turn. Again, it wasn't that long ago that Florida State was here and everybody thought Florida was here, and now the roles have completely reversed. So this would be a big in-state win too. I mean, we were thinking Penn State. Some people are going to have them preseason number one. That's big. Flipping a kid from Nebraska, that's good. But FSU, you got to continue to pile up wins on them. You don't want to give them any life, any oxygen. All right. Next up, Corey, this is a really cool story. 3-star offensive lineman Javari Lucas out of Glade Central, the great school down in Belle Glade that produced so many great players that have ended up at Florida. What can you tell us about Javari Lucas? Because he's got some ties to the Florida Gators program, Corey.
Yeah, Fred and Kelvin Taylor. Yeah, those are his cousins. And, immediately after Florida offered, they obviously became a top contender. And, those family ties were a big reason why. But also at the same time, he went up to Florida this spring, had a great time, really got to know Rob Sale and Jonathan DeCosta a little bit better. And shortly after the visit, he told us, hey, Florida's number one. There's other offers on the table like Penn State, West Virginia, Miami. USF's another school that he's heavily considering. But all eyes are on Florida right now. The family connections, that's a big thing. He loved Florida throughout his childhood. And, this past spring, he was one of those guys who was kind of on the borderline with Florida. They want to sign 5 offensive linemen this cycle. But, Lucas was one they wanted to really kind of evaluate more and more. And from what we were told, DeCosta went down and watched him in the spring and was definitely pleased with his growth. They think he's a guy with nice length, nice athleticism, a guy with a pretty nice ceiling to him. A guy that'll probably need some time, to develop, but with it, supposed to be a larger offensive line class, I think Florida could possibly give him the green light this weekend if he wants to come in the class. So he's one of the reasons why I put him on here. Obviously, there's some higher ranked guys on this official visitors list, but with Florida at number 1, and this is the offer he obviously really wanted for a long time, I think it's all shaping up to, for him to possibly be in this class sooner than later.
And I know you mentioned DeCosta. I don't know if you mentioned him previously, but that's John DeCosta, Florida's co-offensive line coach. For anybody that may not know that, it's sometimes not everybody. We take for granted, Corey, that everybody, we know the names of all these assistants.
Yeah, no,
maybe
for sure.
not everybody does.
Yep.
All right, so let's go to another offensive lineman. And so out of the 3 guys we've mentioned already from this week's big haul of official visitors, again, this is the 5 most likely visiting this coming weekend to ultimately land at Florida. So we're through 3, and 2 of them have been offensive linemen. The other one's been a cornerback. Another offensive lineman here. So I think Florida fans are going to like hearing this. Obviously, they're always wanting to know when that 5-star guy is going to pop on the offensive line for Florida. But Florida has proven this staff that they can take 3- and 4-star guys and develop them and turn them into good players. So next up, 4-star Javon Cooper, Corey, of Melbourne Central Catholic. I believe he's committed to Syracuse. And again, an area where the Florida Gators historically have just kicked tail. They have done so many good things over there. Wilbur Marshall, Chris Collinsworth, Jawan Taylor, the big offensive lineman, right? Jamari Lyons, the defensive lineman on the current team. Just player after player after player. And he is one of the better ones in the Space Coast region. Javon Cooper, Corey, is Florida going to flip him from Syracuse?
Yeah, it's another guy that, we were told, someone with direct knowledge of his recruitment, that Florida feels as if they push this weekend, they can definitely get him in the class. And even back earlier this year, Keith, when we spoke to him in Under Armour in Orlando, he said, hey, I'm committed to Syracuse, but Florida's the number 2 school on my list. I spoke with him this morning, actually. We'll have a story at Gators Online tomorrow. And he said nothing's changed. Florida's still the school with the best shot changing his mind. Florida State is another school in the mix, but, Florida right now definitely has the best shot. And, his mom had a full ride scholarship offer from Florida. She actually verbally committed there. She didn't end up signing with the Gators, but it's a school in his family that they all love. He grew up being a huge Gators fan. He has tons of Florida fans throughout his family, so that's a big thing. And, I asked him what keeps him committed to Syracuse. He said, really it's just how hard they recruit him and how they jumped into the mix before a lot of other schools did. But I think this weekend it'll be more of an in-depth setting for him. They'll really get to see the ins and outs of the program. So I think that can go a long way. But like I said before, Keith, from what we were told, if Florida puts their foot on the gas this weekend, they think they could definitely get this kid in the class. And he's a guy, he's a versatile piece. From what I'm told, he would probably start out at guard, but he does have the length and athleticism to potentially switch out to tackle over time.
Okay. Good looking dude, man. We saw him earlier this year at one of the Under Armour camps, and, Javon Cooper, big offensive lineman. Jari Carr, who we talked about earlier, big offensive lineman. In fact, Corey, Blake and I were talking on the previous show this week. When we met Jari Carr a couple years ago, it was hard to project, but that's what, he wasn't that big. He was just a kind of round, you know what I mean? But college coaches get paid to project not only how good a guy is going to become, but how good of a body it's going to turn into. So they're used to looking at guys 15, 16 and looking at the hand size and the shoe size and the calf size and the big ankles and all that stuff and saying, okay, this guy's going to be big, okay? And sure enough, these guys are all big. All right, the last guy, Corey, this week's 5 most likely official visitors to sign with the Florida Gators. This is a good one. CJ Hester, another Space Coast guy, 4-star cornerback from Cocoa High. What a great program Ryan Schneider has built over there. Man, they're fun to watch. They play the best schedule. Tell us about CJ Hester. Who's the main competition, Corey, and can the Gators get to the finish line here?
Yeah, no, I spoke with him yesterday, and he said Florida still is his number one school. But right now, Keith, it's another Florida-Syracuse battle. He says Syracuse is Florida's top competition. We've been kind of noting that on the board for a while, and he confirmed that, when we spoke yesterday. And it's the same type of thing. Syracuse got in on his recruitment very early, even back in the fall when he visited for the Texas A&M game. He mentioned Florida and Syracuse as the schools he liked the most. So, but I think with Florida, he even told me, he goes, there's a chance he could silently commit to a school before he makes his decision in early July. He said he's going to stick on that because I asked him, I said, if you have such a good visit this weekend, is there a chance you could pop? And he said, hey, I could always silently commit to a school, but I'm still going to make my public announcement in July. But as far as with Florida, why they're on top, Jerron Wilson, again, secondary coach, he's done an outstanding job of connecting with him. They speak almost every day, whether that's at lunch, if that's after track practice, just at nighttime. They constantly are on the phone, just getting to know each other. And again, it's beyond football. When I asked him, it's, hey, he's a father figure. He just wants to know me as a person. So I think Jerron Wilson has done a good job connecting with these kids outside of football and just being himself, and that's really kind of paying dividends. And this is another kid, Keith, with versatility. I know with the recruiting services, some people peg him as a safety recruit, but I know Florida likes him as a bigger corner. But a guy that can obviously play safety nickel over time. But I think right now, I think of all the guys we mentioned, Florida has been on top for him the longest. And I think this weekend, it can really go a long way in sealing the deal behind the scenes, ahead of a July commitment.
Okay. And, I think people are probably going to be like, okay, you guys talk a lot about relationships and who's recruiting kid hardest. What about NIL? Well, a lot of the NIL is sort of in the initial stages. A lot of that will be discussed on these official visits. That's kind of where so we'll know more about that moving forward. But also a lot of people still don't want to talk about it. Still, Blake and I were discussing this the other day, Corey. Some people still see it as taboo. And the reality of it is these guys are professionals now. We all need to just grow up. And if NIL is big in a recruitment, we're not bashing a kid or his family at all. Yeah. If it's big to them, it's big to them. But really, again, for a guy like CJ Hester, that the main schools involved probably have most of the time similar NIL situations for these young guys. So then it does get back to relationships and development, player development, huge, maybe even bigger than relationships. Are you winning? So those things still matter. Don't kid yourself. There's those cases where a guy is strictly NIL and gets a great deal and just says, hey, I don't care about anything else. That's where I'm going. And everybody's got different financial situations. But we want people to know we are definitely keeping track of that things. And sometimes we know things that we just don't feel comfortable sharing either. Some people want it private. But rest assured, Florida is going to be these young guys visiting this weekend. You're going to know a lot more about that during this weekend's official visits. All right, Corey. Let me go to the next screen here. Want to remind everybody here to like and subscribe down below. All right. Leave a comment. I usually do, and it's usually negative toward me, and that's fine. And they love you, Corey, though. I don't know. I think you're the one going through there.
It's a tough crowd over here.
Yeah. Tell me about it. But, we're going to have a lot of coverage at Gators Online this weekend. Obviously, we're going to be inside. We're going to take you guys, the subscribers, inside these recruitments, where they're at, who's sitting with who's spending the most time with the position coach, and, all that stuff. We're going to put you there. We do it every big official visit weekend. So make sure you go to gatorsonline.com. Corey, I wanted to ask you one more thing. Just kind of, if I said the over-under on commitments this weekend, and remember, Florida's only got 2 right now. All right. Yeah. If I said 3, if I just said 3 is the number, more, less, or that's the good number, what do you think this weekend? Is it going to be a big haul, or is it going to be more of a laying the foundation for commitments to come later?
No, I think 3. I think probably 4. I think that's definitely realistic. I think overall, when you look at these guys, I think Javon Cooper is a guy who I could see commit this weekend. We didn't mention Keith because we were going back and forth, but Blaise Thomasy, he's an offensive lineman out of Baton Rouge. He's another one who'll be in town that we're definitely keeping close tabs on. His great grandfather played at Florida. His grandma was Florida's first ever prom queen. So he has major connections there. I think it'll just.
You mean prom queen or homecoming queen?
What did I say? Prom? Yeah, homecoming queen. Yeah.
Okay, no,
Either way,
okay.
high accolades either way. Yeah. So she's won. I mean, all those connections. I think overall will be with Florida if they want to give them the green light. There's a lot of guys like Javari Lucas, offensive lineman out of Belglade, another guy who it depends on if Florida wants to give him the green light. So if Florida, I mean, I look at 3 to 4 guys, man, on that list. I mean, overall, I think DQ Forkpaw has Florida on top, but he says he's going to decide December. Maybe he pops, but I'm going to say 4. 3 to 4 is definitely accurate.
Okay, but so you're taking the over.
Taking over. Yeah, I'm going to take the over. It's pretty close. There are going to be a lot of guys. I think they set the foundation. I think the higher ranked guys, you're setting the foundation for later this summer. But when you look at some of the other guys, some of the guys we just mentioned, I could definitely see those guys pop.
Yeah, it seems like July's the month everybody wants to commit in these days. All right.
Yep.
Last plug for Gators Online. Look at this.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you don't get graphics more high end than this, Corey. For all your official visit scoop, make sure you go to gatorsonline.com this weekend. For Corey Bender, I am Keith Niebuhr. This was the Gators Online Recruiting Show, Part 2. Huge official visit weekend for Florida. And Corey and Blake will be on hand Sunday at the University of Florida and I'm sure it'll be nice and pleasant outside, Corey. And
be nice and hot.
You'll be nice hot. You'll be dodging lightning like Blake and I were that one weekend.
Well, you can't tell right now. I'm actually severely sunburnt from going to the beach. You can't tell because it's nighttime, but thank God we picked
banana hammock again, or.
Yeah, I passed on the hammock. No, I'm joking. No, I just don't put on sunscreen.
No, were you wearing a banana hammock?
Oh, no, God, no. You know, the problem is, Keith, I don't wear sunscreen. So my wife gets on me, but I don't wear any sunscreen sometimes. So I paid the price like the last 2 days.
Yeah. Well, you're going to be hot Sunday, and so is the Gators Online coverage. Corey, that's what they call a good transition right there. All right. That'll do it for the Gators Online Recruiting Show. Thank you all so much. Hit the like button, subscribe, and leave a comment. We'll do it again soon. We're going to try to do a wrap-up of everything early next week from this coming weekend. So take care, everybody, and have a good weekend, and stay safe out there.